Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come? Oh my God. Today's episode is incredible. We recorded it months ago, but as you know, I have not been extremely adept at releasing things lately. Ha 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 ha. No, I will update you with what's been going on re the drought, re my assignments. But before we get into that, I just need you to know that today's guest is Rachel Bloom. She is a comedian, writer, singer, songwriter, and producer. She's best known for co-creating and starring in the TV series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, for which she has won an Emmy, a Golden Globe, a Critics' Choice, and a TCA Award. She has also been in shows like Reboot, Julia, which one of my favorite shows too. She has a Broadway show called Death Let Me Do My Show, which is fantastic. If you have the opportunity to go see it, go see it. She narrated the female orgasm episode of Explained that I was on, and she's an all-around icon, a sexual health icon, a mental health icon. We are so lucky to have her on this podcast. If you are a first-time comer to the podcast because you're here for Rachel Bloom, you can jump ahead to like 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here, but no pressure to listen to this next part and no pressure to skip it. But we're going to do some housekeeping now for the original companions about the orgasm assignments that I have been supposed to be doing lately. So as far as the assignments, I have not been great at doing these things. I did go to the gynecologist to get everything like checked out, but last episode's assignments I really didn't do. The one that Lola prescribed me. One of them, she said, was to listen to her masturbation walkthrough for people with vulvas, and I went to do it. I went to do it so many times, but every time I would go to do it, I was thinking about you guys, which, no offense, but not the horniest thing ever. Like, I was just thinking about things in the way of how will I talk about this on the podcast, which we've talked about masturbating and orgasms and being inside your head. This was the most inside my head I have ever been. For some reason, these assignments feel different than they did the first time around. So we're still asking everybody for assignments, but I might not necessarily get to them. Just because of my feelings around them. And yeah, so we recorded this episode in like October, and I didn't release it until now just because I've been putting off these assignments, and I didn't want to have the episode up without saying, you know, I did this thing and it didn't work, or it did work, or whatever it was. But now I just need to go with the flow. And so in these months that I haven't been releasing episodes, I've just been kind of like resting and taking the pressure off, which was what Charlotte said initially, like just take the pressure off. I went to Australia. We recorded a great episode there. You can hear that soon. There were no orgasms in Australia. There were no orgasms basically after I announced, I had one from the Moulin Rouge show, November, December. Now we're like almost at the end of January. And funnily enough, not releasing and not thinking about this has helped me release again. I was sitting around one day earlier this week, and I grabbed my toy that, you know, always has worked for me, the Air Plus Arouser from Plus One. It's not available anymore. Unfortunately, I don't know why, and I hope they bring it back eventually, but I used it and I was just kind of resting into myself and calmly just going, if this happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it's fine. Like, there was no pressure on me. There was no thinking about how am I going to talk about this on the podcast, which I mean, I am now, but at the time it just wasn't in my brain. So, I had like 3 orgasms this week, 3 separate times. The first one was alone. The second one, I did like multiples, and then I built up confidence so that when I was in bed with Ben another time, I reached for it and it worked. And he like turned around and he was like, "Did you just?" And I was like, "Uh-huh." And he was like, "Oh my God." So I'm very happy and I'm excited. But I'm also not banking on them being back officially. It's definitely not the same intensity as it was when I first started doing it, but it feels good again. Like it does feel like the release. And I use that faucet analogy. It feels like the faucet is flowing. And yeah, I'm pumped. But I'm even more pumped about this episode. How lucky are we that we got to have Rachel Bloom on? She shares so much about her vulva and how it's changed post-pregnancy, orgasms post-pregnancy. We talk a lot about limerence, which if you've never heard about limerence, this is an amazing episode to listen to. And even if you have heard about limerence, it will make you feel so much better. The basics of limerence are just serious, debilitating crushes. So we talk about that, and I obviously hard relate. I know a lot of you will too. And yeah, I'm just, wow, what a time. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and let's get it started.
How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help, 'cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
You guys, I'm so excited for this episode. Welcome, Rachel Bloom.
Hi. I'm just so excited to be here.
So nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. I'm such a fan of yours. I mean, we were both on that same
Explained.
Netflix Explained, which my own husband watched and didn't realize that I was the narrator until halfway through.
Stop.
He's like, oh my gosh, I got to show this to Rachel. And then he's like, oh, that's my wife.
That's so funny. I am a massive fan of yours as well. I love Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I loved your show, The Dead Show.
Reboot. Yeah. All right.
Death Let Me Do My Show.
Oh, Death Let Me Do My Show. Oh, wait, did you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Did you see it in New York or LA?
In New York.
Right. I'm sorry. My head's a mess right now.
No worries.
Thank you for coming in New York.
Of course.
So honored that you came
Please.
to see it. And I got to say, there were so many cut parts in it of it. The show was like 2.5 hours and I've cut out so much material. There was so much material about sexual health, vagina post childbirth that's just out. And I'm sad that you weren't there to see it.
Well, we can talk about it today.
Great. Oh my gosh.
So this episode is seriously a long time coming. We were just talking about the fact that you narrated that Netflix Explained episode about the female orgasm. And I remember at the time being like, I wonder why they chose Rachel Bloom, because I hadn't watched Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I just thought it was a show about crazy women. And I was like, I don't want to watch something that perpetuates that. But they choose those narrators very carefully, and there's always a reason. Then I watched it and I was like, oh, she gets it. This show is amazing and so very horny. There is so much sexual health discussed and so many like nuanced feelings about sex. So I very much understood why it was you that they chose, and it's just perfect.
It's funny you were saying the title Crazy Ex turned you off, like turned you off. To me and Aline Brosh McKenna, who co-created Crazy Ex with me, that title was always so inflammatory.
Yeah.
We didn't realize that people would actually, it's like, there's like a Neil LaBute play called Fat Pig. I thought in my head, it was like that, right? But I'm so glad you got over the hump and watched it.
Same. I was also like, this should have been called Crazy Horny Ex-Girlfriend.
Yes, it is a very horny show. We made it as horny as possible while fitting in the standards of the FCC because it was, of course, on
the CW.
But yes, it's horny.
Have you always been so horny?
Yeah. I mean, I was horny. I remember being like a little kid and was horny and knew about sex and was just like, was horny, but also simultaneously wanted to know about my body. So horny, but not to the detriment of ever thinking that a man's pleasure was more important than my own for whatever reason.
Which is that's the proper way to be horny.
I think so.
Let's just kick this off. What was your first time coming like? How did it happen?
So I read How to Masturbate in a book. basically. I spent a lot of time in the local bookstore. I grew up very close to a mall, like a tiny mall.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bookstore called B. Dalton that was turned into a Sephora, which made me angry. But anyway, I'd spend a lot of time in that bookstore and I would just go there. I was 9, 10, 11, and I'd be alone in the mall and I didn't have a lot of friends.
Mm-hmm.
I was made fun of a lot. And I would spend time in the teens section and there were all these sex books.
Yeah.
And I just started reading them. And there was this book, there were a couple books that were like girls to masturbate will massage their, clitoris. And I was like, oh, interesting. That hadn't occurred to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'd only heard about the vagina. And so one time I remember it clear as day. I was 11. I was in my room. I had this old soft toy box in my closet with all these old toys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on it to get some privacy because my room didn't have a lock. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I should try this masturbating, touching of the clitoris. I wonder if it works.
Yeah.
And I did. And I had my first orgasm and I was like, well, this is what I'm doing from now on.
This is my new hobby.
This is the only thing I'm going to do. This was the greatest thing. And this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. This is who I am now.
Yeah. Unreal. I love that you educated yourself on it and also that you believed in the joy of the clitoris because it was something that people were like, oh yeah, the clit's where it's at. And I was like, I'm telling you, guys say vagina, so it must be vagina. But Robin actually did some new research on clits or found some new research on clits. Rob, do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, so OHSU School of Medicine in Oregon, I believe, they were doing some research into the nerves in the clitoris from transmasculine donors who were getting gender-affirming surgical procedures.
Amazing.
And so they took the tissues from the person's clitoris during the phalloplasty.
Just some of it.
And they looked at one half of the dorsal nerve, magnified it 1,000 times, and they found that there were about 5,000 nerve fibers on average, which means that in the average in the total dorsal nerve of the clit would be about 10,281, which is about 2,000 more than they had previously thought.
Because the previous thought was based on...
It was a bovine study from the 70s or something that was referred to in that book, The Clitoris, that came out way back then. And so one of the concluding statements that they made is that with 9,800 to 11,000 nerve fibers in your clitoris, there are only 18,000 nerve fibers in your hand.
Whoa.
So if you think about the size difference there, you've got sort of
small but mighty.
That's so many nerve fibers.
Very concentrated amount of nerve ending.
Yeah, down in your little teeny tiny.
That makes so much sense. That's insane.
It's mad.
So this conversation is happening at a really interesting time because I've been separately having a lot of problems with frequent urination. I'm just going to share my my health on this.
Yeah.
So I've been having a lot of problems with frequent urination ever since I gave birth, and I've always been a really frequent peer. Mm-hmm. But ever since I gave birth, it's a lot. I'm leaking.
Yeah.
So I talked to, first of all, the sexual and bladder health doctor, Rachel Rubin, who is big on social media, and she's amazing. And she's kind of one of the leaders in this field of sexual health. And then I started getting pelvic floor therapy, pelvic floor therapy, physical therapy for bladder incontinence. And it involves literally sticking a finger in my vagina and massaging and saying, okay, does this hurt? That's connected to your hip. Mm-hmm. And it's not woo-woo, it's just how the muscles work. And I'm literally mid-treatment, so I'm learning, my mind is exploding with all of these facts. But one thing that just happened is she was like, I'm going to look at the skin of your vulva because gynecologists only ever stick a speculum in and they look at inside. And she's like, I'm just going to actually look at your vulva. And she looked at my clitoris. I was like, how long have you been on birth control? And I said, I've been since I was 20. So I've been on birth control, until I was pregnant. I've been on and off for 16 years. She goes, your clitoral hood is actually small, which means that when you're getting aroused, is it sometimes tender or painful when you get aroused? And I was like, yeah, it is. She says, okay, you have something called clitoral phimosis.
What? That
we are only just learning about because the first papers on it only came out in the past couple of years.
That's mad.
So I'm going to see a doctor this Friday to potentially be put on a hormonal cream to help with that.
Whoa.
And it's something that happens when you're on birth control. So basically the hood
shrinks,
which doesn't allow the actual clitoris, which is the bulb under the hood, to grow. So there's pain.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even what I came in for.
That's
and I'd never heard of
insane.
this. And I was like, I talk about clits all the time. This is
Yeah.
crazy. And then, okay, another thing I learned, there's this part of the vulva called the vestibule.
Mhm.
And it basically is kind of starts, I think, where the urethra is and then kind of is on the outside skin of the vagina. The vestibule is more connected to the bladder
Mm.
than the vaginal nerves. So there are just so many things. I consider myself pretty gynecologically aware.
Yeah.
But in the past couple weeks that I've been, originally, I just want to talk about why I'm peeing so much. I'm waking up 3-4 times at night to pee, but I'm learning all this other stuff that is just blowing my mind.
Has it gotten more difficult to come as you've gotten older because of the birth control?
God, maybe gradually. I think gradually it has, but it's a chicken or the egg thing, because I used to worry, because I was masturbating from such a young age, did I train myself only to come from the clit, right? And that's bullshit, because 75% of women can only come from direct stimulation of the clitoris. I think that's like
also
the stat or something.
Imagine it's like a guy jacks off for a long time and people are like, oh, did I train myself with one motion? It's like, no, if that works for you, it's not going to stop working.
Yeah,
exactly. Has it gotten, well, this is also, look, I don't think it's gotten more difficult as much as my energy's different. I have a child. I'm just more tired. I'm just more tired.
Yeah, no, I can fully imagine that. And it's not super horny to know that there's a kid in the next room who like needs you.
To be honest, though,
it is. No.
No, to be honest, like that's definitely a thing. It's more that the kid makes you tired. Although something else I was talking about with Dr. Rubin is she says, it's kind of we're told by film and TV, oh, you should fuck at night. We're tired at night. It's actually morning.
Fuck in the morning.
Morning is when we should be fucking. You have the energy. You're kind of in this dreamlike state. So I found that really interesting. The buzzkill in my house is my dog. She had little ACL surgery on her knees like a year ago, and
because she's an athlete.
Ever since that happened, she's trying out for the. I wish I knew more sports specifics to say something funny, but she's trying out for the basketball.
Space Jam.
There you go. That's the one thing I know.
Yeah.
Obviously, she would start growling at me and my husband whenever we just started kissing, and it's gotten better. But we tried asking vets about this, and they were like, I don't know. So she was much more the problem.
Yeah.
Trying to lock her out.
She had a black cone on for a while to prevent her from licking her wound. And so whenever we'd start kissing on the bed or something, she goes, and we'd call her the nun because she looked like a creepy nun with that cone, and she'd get in our face and growl. We felt like we were like, oh, is she trying to stop us from making another? Because she's like, don't do this.
Don't do this. Again. Yeah. She's like, if I can't lick my wound, he can't lick your pussy.
There you go.
Not in my house. Well, I think it's so interesting that you learned that going into your doctor, because like we're always saying, go to your doctor at least once a year and see if things are okay. And then also there might be other things that they can find. I went in recently because I've been in the midst of an orgasm drought for like 5-6 months. And I just wanted to check out, like, I'm like, am I still good? And she's like, you're good, but like, what else is going on in your life? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like pretty depressed. And she's like, yeah, that's the problem. Like your vagina's fine. Like everything's still cool here. But the hood thing, it just reminds me of my boyfriend had to have a circumcision at 15 because his hood had a chickenpox scar on it, which made it,
or is the hood their hood
the foreskin? Yeah. Which made it really hard for the foreskin to be able to pull back, so he couldn't have boners. So it's like, we're always talking about how similar dicks and clits are. Like, if your hood is too tight, it will be difficult to come.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see because this has always been part of my narrative, because I masturbated before I started doing anything with guys, which for women is more rare. I was never shy about saying to a guy, no, this is how you make me come. And I grew very self-conscious about, is it taking me too long? And it's partially why I'm passionate about this, because it was something I was insecure about, but that learned no, I was doing the right thing. It was they who'd been misinformed. But I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it does take me a while because of this phimosis thing. I literally just learned this. So I will let you know.
Cool.
I'm going to start a cream. And then if that doesn't work, there's like a little slight incision you can get, which I'm like, I don't know if I want to get like clit surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not surgery. It's like, a local thing, but it's kind of, and this is a really new field.
Yeah.
The idea of female sexual health and how it intersects with the bladder and how your actual vulva skin is affected by hormones. It feels like I'm navigating the Wild West.
Yeah. And it's like when people are like, oh yeah, you're actually one of the first cases in here. You're like, well, that's not fucking fun. But you're not one of the first people to ever have experienced it. It's just they didn't place enough emphasis on research.
Yeah. Isn't it that 5% of women have never had an orgasm?
Something like that.
Yeah. Jinx.
Yeah. So like that sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for them. But it's also, it has
No,
to
I'm
do
sorry.
with-
And I'm sorry for you that you've had this drought. That sucks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it does. But it's okay. But you were saying that you learned about masturbation through books. And one of the things that people have said jump-started your career was your song Fuck Me, Ray Bradbury.
Sure was.
About the sci-fi author Ray Bradbury. And did you really jerk off to his books, or do you jerk off to books in general?
No, I'll tell you what inspired that song. The germ of that song came in college, and I had just broken up with this guy who was incredibly smart, incredibly funny, but very emotionally cold. And I was home for the summer rereading The Martian Chronicles, which is one of my favorite books. And I was like, what I love about Ray Bradbury's writing is it's incredibly smart and, scientific, but ultimately is about feeling and emotion and ultimately is about people. And I thought, this is the type of guy I need to be with. Someone who's smart, but also intuitive. And I thought, at the time I was on a sketch group and I was always trying to, in the back of your head, you're always thinking of what are sketch ideas. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Just the idea of like my dream guy is this like old guy, Ray Bradbury. And then I don't know. I think I was like, that's a fun song. I had just taken a musical theater writing class. So I was also in songwriting mode. And so I just kind of like plunked it out on my parents' piano. And then I forgot about it for 2 years. It was always just kind of in the back of my head, but I wasn't really incorporating songs into my comedy yet. So the answer is no, I didn't jerk off to Ray. I didn't like jill off to Ray Bradbury books. But I always loved, in my natural attraction to men, I was weirdly attracted to a cold intelligence. I mean, this goes back to my first crush, who was this guy who was the class clown who treated me like shit. And it sent this template of like class clowns who treat me like shit.
Yeah.
But knowing that I needed a guy who had both, but like my childhood crush. I mean, I saw a production of My Fair Lady when I was like 12, and I was like, this guy playing Henry Higgins. Like Henry Higgins is like, oh, I love a British man who doesn't give a fuck about me.
Yeah, who thinks I'm scum.
Same thing with like Colin Firth in Pride and Prejudice, right? The Mr. Darcy, Alan Rickman in Dogma was a weird sexual touchstone for me. So that was a running
The guy
theme.
who hates you, who you eventually trick into liking you.
Oh, you're totally right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely fucking right.
My
But also that's like part of, I mean, Alina and I did a lot of research, and it didn't come up as much in the show, but something I continue to want to explore is this term limerence, which
Rachel,
is
it's literally what I've written down for this episode, because as I was watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I was like, there's a lot of mental health discussed. And I was like, I think this girl's a limerent, because I've been looking into limerence myself, because I think I'm very limerent-y. So can you explain to everybody what limerence is if they haven't heard about it?
So limerence is the science psychological term for falling in love and for infatuation. And it's meant to, there's this TED talk by this, she's an anthropologist, I believe, named Helen Fisher.
We love Helen Fisher.
Right? You know how
she's been on twice. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I got to listen to those episodes. So as you know, she says, Mother Nature doesn't care if you're happy. Mother Nature wants you to reproduce. And so when you have a crush on someone, from what I understand, it becomes a drive like eating and sleeping. It's not a want, it's a need. And they put people who have crushes, who are in a limerent state under, I want to say like MRI scans, and they've scanned their brains. And what happens is your dopamine skyrockets when you think about that person and when you're around them, but your serotonin, which is your overall well-being, plummets.
Yeah.
Which is why this term lovesick is real. Yeah. You're actually in a state of depression, except when you're with this person, and it's to get you to reproduce. So I don't even know how we got on the subject of limerence, but
because guys who hate you. Or guys who are cold.
Yeah.
So part of what creates limerence is literally the mating dance, is the will they or won't they. It's why we like romantic comedies, but when the people actually get together, we're like, I don't need to see them being happy.
Yeah.
We look for patterns in the push and the pull because it's the mating dance, because it's the will they get together. It goes back to like the lizard brain reproduction aspect of things, is from what I understand. And what's so fucked up is like, if your serotonin plummets, I'm someone who is already predisposed to low serotonin, which is why I'm on Prozac. If your serotonin plummets and you already have low serotonin, love fucks you up.
Yeah.
And you need that dopamine.
Crushes crush you.
Yes, totally. I love that. I'd never heard that. So anyway, but the idea of going for men who are unavailable makes a lot of sense because Mother Nature wants you to, first of all, engage in this mating dance, but also I believe there's this thing of competition, right? I want to compete for the strongest lion. And if he doesn't give a fuck about you, there's this sense of, oh, he's the lion that I need to pursue. There's something in our brains that
He's
likes the will they or won't they. Yes, there's the pursuit, and it's so counter to monogamy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. So there's crushes and there's people, like, not everybody who has crushes on people is a limerent. Like, the definition that the Attachment Project said is like, the addictive energy of love is something that we're all prone to experiencing. We may think and talk about our new love interest feverishly, unable to control our excitement, adoration, and yearning, especially in the early stages. Everything just seems to fade into insignificance apart from trying to be in the company of this person. That's normal. But what if our love or infatuation becomes an all-consuming longing? In such cases, a simple crush may have morphed into limerence, a mental state of profound romantic infatuation, obsession, and fantastical desire for one person. You will not pay attention to your job anymore. You'll not pay attention to your friendships anymore. Everything is consumed by, what does this person think of me? And how can I make them think of me more and more highly? And I've had so many experiences where I've been going after people who they are not interested in me, but they are giving these little love kernels, and you will hold on to those little kernels and dissect them and go. Like, there was this guy in college that anytime I would hang out with him and my other friend, we would go back upstairs to our dorm room and I'd be like, and do you remember this? He said this to me. And don't you think that that means he's in love too? And like another person saying, hey, I'd actually like to go on a date with you and I like you, that means nothing to you. But when the person, the limerent object is what they're called, gives you anything, just being like, oh, nice top. You're like, you're obsessed. Like, you are thinking the same exact thoughts as me. Yeah.
You know what you're making me realize right now? I've been this is for like a project I'm working on, but also in general thinking, for a lot of my life, not now, but for a lot of my life, I had trouble maintaining female friendships. And not because I was fighting with people as much as they kind of faded away. And that was maybe friendships in general. And you've made me realize, because I was my first crush started in second grade. I was limerent from a very early age. I think friendships really fell by the wayside.
Same.
Whenever I had a crush or relationship drama, which was a lot of my life. And now that I've been with my husband for 15 years, but it's taken that long to rebuild certain patterns and also then reach outside my relationship for friendships.
Yeah, I have the same thing too, because I think a lot of my friendships were based on that that talking about the crush or whatever. Or and then once you get in the relationship with the guy, you're like, okay, well, I don't need that. This sounds bad, but it does happen where you're like, I don't need that relationship anymore, because what that person was there was the support of trying to get this guy. And now I don't want to talk to you about this guy because we're in a thing. So what do we talk about if our relationship was based on crushes, where it could just be my crush or her crush or something? But it's like, it's also kind of this, it's misogynistic and patriarchal idea of thinking that your life's goal is to have a partner. And there were a lot of times where I was like, oh yeah, you have a group of girlfriends because they can like go to parties with you, and then like you maybe like meet a guy and then you don't need those friends anymore.
So funny.
Not true.
No, of course not. But that's what we're taught. I mean, when I say we're taught, I was really raised not to venerate love at all. My mother is a very, let's just say, unsentimental person. So I wasn't, it was purely coming from me and how good the crushes made me feel. But I think that I followed that dopamine. And also I have ADHD, which is something I've only realized about myself in the past couple of years. And that's a dopamine seeking behavior. So it's like, oh, you combine like low serotonin dopamine seeking. Yeah, I'm going to be a fucking terrible friend if I can get like the dick of the guy I'm in love with. Yeah.
I think I've also been limerent in friendships too, though, where I've been like, oh, that girl seems fucking cool. I really want to be friends with her. I'll do anything. I'll post an Instagram story just to make her think of me and like think I'm cool. Oh. And then by the time when you actually secure the friend and you start to learn about, you know, like their vulnerabilities and their walls come down, and you're like, oh, you're just like a normal person, and like I've conquered you, you know, then that part of the ADHD brain is like, okay, well, this has become boring. There's no chase anymore.
We're just friends. And now I guess I have to fucking call you and just get together.
Care when your parents get sick. Yeah.
It's also harder to do in LA, which is weirdly where I've made almost all of my female friends, because I've lived here since my early 20s. I mean, I grew up here, but I've lived here as an adult since my early 20s. But it's harder when you're spread out. You have to really make an effort.
Yeah.
To maintain friendships, as opposed to when I'm in New York, there is a natural hangy outiness.
Yeah. Or if you're doing shows, there's people there. Like in LA,
I'm also there for special things. So I could be biased.
No, I most of my best friends live in LA, and for that reason, I've had to be much more reaching out to maintain those relationships, because I won't just see them. It's not like college where it's just like, oh, I run into you in the dining hall. But so there are symptoms and characteristics of limerence, because some people might be thinking like, wait, am I having a crush or am I a limerent? Consistent and intrusive thoughts about the limerent object. Wow. We'll call them the LO from now on. Idealization of the LO. For example, they are perfect. Constantly being reminded of the LO by places, people, objects, and situations. Like if there was a store that had like roughly the guy's last name in the title, I'd be like, him and me, meant to be.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Intense fear of being rejected by the LO. But I would also say this is kind of coupled with what my therapist would call negative fantasies, because she would ask sometimes, why don't you just ask this person if they want to date? And I'd be like, oh my God. They'd be like, no, you're disgusting. I would never do that. And she's like, why is that your fantasy projection? And we'll talk about the fact that a lot of limerence comes from not great attachment styles.
I'm on the Attachment Project website. I've never been on this website now. And I need to stop reading it while we're on this podcast, because this is all I talked about.
I'll read it to you. Yeah.
This is all I talked about. And what's interesting on what happened on Crazy X is the show was originally much more about limerence, and then it became more about overall mental health. So the limerent aspect fell away a little bit.
If anybody hasn't seen the show, the basis is this woman has a very great career. She's killing it. And then this old boyfriend from camp, she runs into him for like a second and then is like, oh shit, I need to give up my entire life to pursue this man. Like, it's the most limerent thing you've ever heard in your life.
Because it feels good.
Yeah, it feels, oh my God, I'm being a new me.
This is so interesting. I love this quiz.
Don't take the quiz while we're recording.
Great.
Take it.
I will not take the quiz while we're recording. I'll take it after. Okay.
So actually, no, you can take the quiz. I'll read more symptoms. So fluctuations of mood.
But what's the difference between being limerence and being a limerent?
I think a limerent has lots of limerence, lots of events of limerence throughout their life. Like, this is not just one guy that I felt this for. My current boyfriend, I was totally limerent for.
Wow. Oh my God. Sorry. The first couple questions on this attachment style quiz, as you know, please answer the following questions with respect to your mother or mother-like figure. Holy shit.
Love that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I am like, oh my God. This is, man, I'm
Going down a rabbit hole.
Keep taking the quiz.
well, this is what I'm doing today.
Yeah. Fluctuations of mood depending on whether the LO seems to reciprocate feelings or not. Like, for example, Barbie has a good day every day, but Ken only has a good day if Barbie pays attention to him. Like, where Ken? Overwhelming emotions ranging from euphoria to distress and guilt. Being awkward, shy, and clumsy around the LO. Spending excessive amounts of time grooming or beautifying yourself to impress the LO.
Ugh, I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. I'm so glad that I met being with my husband for as long as I've been with him. I think has, it's not that you don't have crushes when you're in a relationship, but like it's just really, there's just an alternate version of me. Also, the alternate version of me that wasn't really into therapy, that like, she's not in a good place.
Yeah. No, I always think about that in respect to myself, that I'm like, oh, I've lost touch with a lot of women I used to be.
Yeah.
You know that quote?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's kind of good.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Like, it sucks to think about her, but it's also like, even just learning the term limerence did so much for me, because I was like, oh, I'm not an insane, I don't want to say insane. I'm not different from that many people. Like, this does happen. There is a name for it.
You're not the only one.
I'm not the only one. And there are ways to kind of like help yourself out with it. A lot of those ways are therapy. There is practicing self-awareness and mindfulness, working on attachment insecurities, try cognitive restructuring, journaling, affirmations, exposure, relaxation, and just improving self-worth and focusing on self-care and self-love. Because a lot of limerence also is just being like, caring about this person is so much more important than caring about myself. It's easier to care about another person than it is to care for myself.
But it's also what like the chemicals in your brain are telling you to do. That's the thing.
100%.
It's not necessarily it's not necessarily your fault. What I also love about limerence and getting into it is we put romantic love on such a pedestal of nothing matters more than romantic love. This idea of fate, this idea of meant to be, this idea of if you fall in love with someone, then nothing can stop that. There's actually a lot more to it. And sometimes we are limerent for people who are very horrible for us in the long run.
Yeah.
And so I like the term limerence because it takes the drug of romantic crushes, romantic love off its pedestal and is like, no, hold on. Wait. I know it feels like everything is secondary to this, but what if it isn't?
Yeah. They also say on this website that limerence and addiction are similar in that although the person might know their behavior is harmful, they continue to do it. And that's because they both trigger a strong physiological response, the rush of the feel-good chemicals, and like a substance user, a limerent builds up a tolerance and needs more and more emotional reciprocation from the LO to feel happy.
Yeah, this all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So you're married now and you guys have been together for a really long time. How did you know, well, two parts. Did you know about limerence before you met? And how did you know that this was love and not limerence?
Oh, I did know about limerence before we met. I had just gotten out of a bad thing when we met, and I was definitely limerent for him. In starting out in an unhealthy way. When we were dating, I was almost constantly. It's almost like my brain created a limerence because we were openly dated, like he was very forthcoming about his feelings kind of at the outset, but then my brain almost was anytime he wouldn't text me back right away, I was insecure, but also it made me more limerent.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a good and badness to that. I think at the end of the day, what happened is he made me, as we fell in love, he also made me a better version of myself and was just enjoyable. Like, I don't think limerence is nothing, right? That's attraction. Limerence is attraction.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like limerence is bullshit, but the other half of a long-term relationship isn't like, do you feel sick around this person all the time? It's like, do you enjoy this person as a partner? And so it just became very clear we were rowing the same direction.
Yeah. And he was like invested in stuff that you cared about. Whereas if other limerent objects, if they don't reciprocate, then there is like a cycle of limerence where it will just pass. But limerence can turn into real love.
It can. I mean, limerence versus real love, these are really tricky because, like, I feel like it's really weird that love is in our language, how we talk about the way we feel for someone we're having like a crush on, the way we feel for a person we've been with for 15 years, the way we feel for our pets.
Yeah.
And the way we feel for our child, right? Yeah. Those are all different types of love. And yeah, limerence, I think, when done correctly, grows into a deeper love and understanding. And there's just, I don't know, there's a profound love and understanding that my husband and I have with each other. And I have to say, I still love, like, when I'm home, when we're in his parents' house in Long Island, I'll still go through, he was like the one of the editors of his school paper. I'll still go through his school papers and read his like opinions columns.
I do the same. Ben used to write a cartoon and I always look at his cartoons.
That is so funny.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm still enamored with, but not in an unhealthy way. I just am enamored with this person. Yeah. I think I remain thinking he's the best person, but the unhealthy, insecure love sickness of it has gone away.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it's weird. And then you have this child and you see the elements of him that are in this child and it's wonderful and it's completely platonic, right? But it's still love. You know, it's all these chemical bonds that are, I don't know, like it's just all deep and profound and ultimately make me feel good. I think that's like the biggest difference between limerence and any other type of love is limerence kind of makes you feel bad when you're not with that person.
Right.
You're sick.
Whereas real love, you're secure when they're away.
Yes.
You're not thinking, oh my God, this is the last time I'm ever going to see them. They hate me. They found somebody else. And also, I think one of the things about the symptoms that was like, you think that person's perfect when you're limerent object and you actually get together and start dating, the pedestal kind of goes away because you start seeing them in their daily life and you understand that not everything about them, about their life is perfect. Like when I was limerenting for Ben and he wasn't responding to me for days or whatever because we were just hooking up, nobody yell at Ben. But I would imagine him having this fantastical life when I wasn't there. Oh my God, he's doing the coolest shit and everything he's doing all the time is amazing. And I would be so lucky if the next time I get to see him because it would be taking a break from that amazing life. And now I'm in the amazing life and I'm like, oh, all those days I was pining for him like he was just sitting in Jersey.
That so reminds me of, I feel like this might have been my husband, or maybe it was the guy before. I was talking to a guy friend of mine who's gay. And I was like, what do you think he's thinking right now? Blah, 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 blah. Do you think he's thinking this? And my friend goes, honestly, he's probably just somewhere like eating some food. And that really tickled me and was true. That, he's probably just somewhere eating some food.
His life's not more interesting than yours.
No, and he's not like, oh, I can't wait to get rid of this boring bitch so I can date this like hot supermodel. No, he's He's home eating a burger. He's taking a nap.
Yeah. And he's also not thinking like, when is the next time I get to see her? Like that's when I would think about people, I was like, even if they are not giving me the same amount of attention, it's because they are playing cat and mouse with me and they think about me just as much as I think about them.
Yes, totally.
We are telepathically talking about how much we love each other, but like we can't say that yet because that's embarrassing.
Yep. Oh man. I'm also thinking about what I'm going to tell my daughter if she starts to have crushes and heartbreak and what I can say, because I did not have a mother who understood crushes or heartbreak or anything. She thought it was all stupid. Long story. But
an important story.
I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to figure out what I just remember the pain, especially as a teenager. What can I say to my future child when she's agonizing over someone? And I'm like, but you really should just do this homework. You know, what do I say? And I don't know the salve for that. And it's whatever. She's 3.5. It's not an issue yet, but I think about, that's one of the things that has caused me the most pain. And I just don't want her to feel that pain.
Yeah, I know. There were so many times that like I would go on a vacation and I would get this massive crush for somebody that said 2 words to me.
Wow.
And there was one in particular that I was crying. Oh my God, I'm going to miss him so much. Pabe, he's so amazing. I love Pabe. And then this girl goes, his name is Dave. I didn't even know the man, but it was ruining my life that I was never going to see him again.
Oh, wow. So you're very limerent.
Oh, I'm limerent number 1.
Wow. But it's very symbolic in that you've had issues with like achieving orgasm, right? Because once you get together, that's the orgasm, right? And then it's over.
Yeah.
So in a way, your body is limerent too.
Totally. Also, just to say, because we were talking about attachment styles, the things that will cause limerence the most are an insecure attachment, specifically anxious attachment. And we've done an episode on attachment styles before, but anxious attachment results from inconsistent caregiving during childhood, which gives the child and later the adult an unbalanced sense of security in relationships. So it's usually a parent
this all makes sense.
That like sometimes they love you so much and you're so perfect, and sometimes they just totally shut down or give you the silent treatment, or you did something wrong and they act like, oh, well, okay, that's your father's child or that's your mother's child. It's just an inconsistency. So you get kind of addicted and accustomed to that inconsistency that you're like, oh yeah, no, that's love. It's like, love me and leave me, like me, ignore me.
Yep.
So when you're talking about your daughter and how worried you are for, you know, her inevitable crushes, like, I think because you seem to, you know, love her so much and give her a really secure environment, like not all crushes are necessarily crushing for people who can handle them. Like if she doesn't develop this type of attachment style, which I don't think she will because she has you as a mother, I think those crushes will be more bearable.
Oh,
So
boy.
anybody else listening and wondering, oh my God, how can I prevent my child from getting these debilitating crushes? It's like, give them this secure attachment and then things later will be more okay.
Well,
What are some of your most limerent experiences? I feel like I've shared too many of mine and I have so many more.
I mean, I was in like this secret relationship in college. It's a long story, but I basically got caught between 2 guys on my college sketch group. This is not my husband's. This is other people in. And this
did you
guy
meet in
was
a sketch group?
I did, but he was already graduated. I
Okay.
basically like dated a couple people within this like small group of guys. It's not great. It happens to women in comedy a lot.
Homie Hopper.
Yeah. That's so funny. No, my husband was not involved with this at all, but I was dating these guys and they had like a mini sketch group together that was like getting some like traction, and there was tension between them because of me. And I was removed from the position of director of my college sketch group because I got caught between them, which is called sexual harassment. And I had a secret relationship then with one of them for like 8 months where I would basically take the train. I was still in college. He was out of school, but I was still in school. I would like get on the A train to the last stop because he lived in Inwood, And I would spend, the nights with him in secret. And then I'd get 4 hours of sleep and be exhausted the next day. And all of my friendships went to shit. And I was miserable and exhausted.
Yeah. I would say hard relate. I have had a year-long secret relationship. And again, there is something about that you're like, it's fun because it's like exciting, but it's also like, I totally understand why he wants this to be. I guess yours was secret because of other reasons.
Mine was secret because of like his career and his friendships and stuff. Yeah. But it did the same thing where it creates this Romeo and Juliet torn asunder thing.
Yes.
That you feel your brain really fucking wants.
'Tis forbidden.
It's stupid. It's not though, but it also kind of is. And yeah.
Robin, have you limerented? I feel like you're so secure.
Yeah, but I'm also just like thinking in terms of my last relationship. There were definitely moments where I was probably quite limerent. Like looking back at it now and at the moment and at the time, it sort of just felt toxic. But like looking back, I think there was definitely a time where I was going for something that was, it was supposed to be a bit of a secret. It wasn't supposed to be a big thing. I don't know, kind of like there feels like there were like limerent tendencies in it. But this relationship I'm in now is secure and nice and cozy and we're happy and great. And I'm not feeling the limerency there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then with that is how do you keep like in the bedroom? Like, how do you keep some of that alive? How do you keep mystery alive? Because arousal and desire kind of depend on a little bit of like mystery. And that's the journey of monogamy.
I think we're lucky that like you can go on the road because like absence will make the heart grow fonder. But when you go on the road now because you have a family, does everybody accompany you?
Sometimes if I'm on the road, I'm only away for 2-3 days at a time. I've been doing it kind of weekends. When I was in New York, my family was there. And even if they're not, I'm usually FaceTiming with my daughter and husband while I'm putting makeup on before a show. And then I also just sleep. When I'm on the road, if I'm not talking to them, I'm like kind of resting and sleeping because that's what's best for my voice because I do a lot of singing. So I don't have sexy road story. I don't drink a lot, especially if I'm about to sing because it shreds my voice. So absence does make the heart grow fonder, but it's also work. Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard to say.
Does singing give you the same high that an orgasm can or like a release?
I mean, an orgasm is so bodily. Maybe, but I would say like, I would equate more of an orgasm to like, peeing after you finally, like you've been waiting to pee. Like it's like, what are body releases? Like sneezing is like 1/8 of an orgasm or something, right? So like sneezing is great. I'm really like reactive to mosquito bites. If I have a mosquito bite in the right place and it's going to blow up and I know I shouldn't scratch it, but I scratch it. I mean, that feeling of relief is like
the best.
Oh my God. And then I'm like, this was a bad decision. And now I have to take a steroid because this is going to blow up.
I will say you are a little responsible of one of my most recent non-orgasmic releases, which is when you finally remember something that you've been thinking. So my sister texted me this picture of a guy from Traders Australia. He's like a reality star or whatever on that show. And she goes, doesn't this look like some actor that like he's like in everything and like, you know who I'm talking about, right? And I was like, oh yeah, 100%. He's the guy that like kind of like looks like this all the time or whatever. And she's like, yeah, who is that guy? Like, what's he in? And I was like, I don't know. And so we're trying to like go through it, like the back catalog. I'm like, I think he's like a character actor, like, or like I can also kind of see him like in a tie. Like more recently, I think he played like a dad or something like that. And her and I are like going back and forth for days, like trying to figure out who this fucking guy is. We sent it to our cousins. We were like, can you guys think of any fucking actors? They're sending people who kind of resemble the guy. And we're like, nah, that's not the guy. And then last night I'm doing just like a little more research for this episode. And I am FaceTiming my sister at the same time. And I go, Charlotte, I figured out the guy. And she was like, who is it? I was like, he's in fucking Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And the craziest thing, it's Michael McMillian.
Oh, sure. He's in everything.
He's in everything. And also, doesn't he kind of do this sometimes? Like, huh.
Yeah, I guess that's a face that yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, that's fucking him. And it was this massive release, like, oh, like it was just like having an orgasm or scratching an itch or having a really good sneeze. And what's crazy is he is in the episode of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which fully talks about the orgasm gap, gives like all of the stats that the Netflix Explained episode did, but years before. And the whole concept of the episode is that like, he basically thinks he's been satisfying his wife. He's like, yeah, she always just like is happy, goes to the bathroom and like starts brushing her teeth with an electric toothbrush or whatever. And everyone's like, no, that's not what that is. Like she's going in there and she's using a sex toy. And he has this whole like realization of he's not been doing exactly the right thing or he's not been actually asking her. And I was just like, oh, thank you, Rachel Bloom. Like we have been wondering about this for a week.
Michael McMillan gave you a release in a different way.
Yes.
In the way his character could never give his character's wife the release.
Yes.
Yeah, he was such a mensch with that. We're like, yeah, you're going to play someone who can't make a woman come. I was like, fine, it's fine. That's so funny. Yeah, he's in a lot of stuff.
Anyway, thank you again. Before we get out of here, I just want to circle back to Ray Bradbury for a second.
Yep.
Something that I thought was really cool was on Ray Bradbury's 90th birthday, Mark Edward visited his home and showed him your video, and he reported that Bradbury was charmed by the whole thing and that he watched it with a wise, old, knowing gleam in his eyes and felt a few soft chuckles. How did that feel for you to know that he had seen it?
It was wild. And then I got to meet him.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh
and I just
God.
asked him about his books. I remember I dressed pretty conservatively because I was like, I want him to take me seriously because I actually just want to ask him about his writing process. Yeah, I met him.
That leads into my next question, which is in that video and in a lot of other music video-esque things that you've done, you're often dressed quite sexily and you're looking amazing. And I was wondering, because in some songs as well, you'll talk about having not the best body image. What is that dichotomy like? And I know that that's a character a lot of the time, but...
Yeah, well, that's changed. Okay. Body image was not, I think it was more when I was doing stuff in my early mid-20s and I was looking hot. It was more about the exploration of sexuality in general, about how much power sex has. And they're all pastiches and comments on existing pop music, right? Where everyone's overly sexualized. As I started to get in my late 20s, 30s, I just started to gain weight. And my body changed. And I'd never had issues with body image before, but watching your body go through a change. Oh, you know what? Actually, come to think of it though, you know what it was? When I moved to LA, even though I was a size 4, I would see other women and start to feel that I was like fat. And my stomach has never been toned. I've never been like a toned stomach person. Also, I've always been curvy, and that's just not how my body is. And so I did have little body image issues, but then when I started to gain more weight, those issues, it's nothing serious yet. I think that almost every woman has, body image issues. But look, I was 10 years ago, I was a size 4, 4'6", and now I'm an 8'10". So it's hard. I'm trying my best, but it's hard.
But you mostly felt okay growing up? Like,
oh yeah, growing up I was underweight.
Okay.
The doctor said I needed to eat more. I just had a really quick metabolism and I didn't eat a lot. And I actually my father was the same way as a kid, underweight, and then his body drastically changed, and that's what happened with me. Not that being underweight is
not
like
better.
A good thing. It's just,
but it's more societally
it is. And because of that, I didn't think about it.
Yeah. I've always felt a kind of way where if I felt bad about my body, I was like, okay, well, at least that's what society expects of me. Like the whole you don't know you're beautiful thing. It's like, that's good. Girls are supposed to not know that. Whereas if I remember this one picture in 7th grade, I'm with a bunch of my friends and I'm looking down at my body and it looks like I am so turned on by myself. And I got made fun of ruthlessly for that because people are like, oh my God, Remy thinks she's so hot. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's not the way that you're supposed to be. So have you felt comfortable expressing yourself and finding yourself hot?
I think because my inner child is not the hot girl. I don't aesthetically, like I think I'm pretty attractive actually. I really like my face and but I feel ashamed saying that, right? There's like a weird shame to saying that because I know someone's gonna be like, no, you're not. But I like,
fuck that guy,
for the most part, the way I look, and I think I'm pretty. I do think I'm aesthetically pretty, but it's not part of my personal narrative because I wasn't like as a kid, and maybe I'm just not letting it be because that shows a certain vanity. But that's so interesting. The pretty and doesn't know it. We want women to be hot but still self-deprecating because if they know they're beautiful, that's interesting.
Yeah. But I think just rounding it out and going back to Limerence, it's like doing that stuff that affirms who you are, that and the things that are important to you, things that you respect about yourself. I'm a smart person. I'm a great songwriter. I'm being you right now. I've won Golden Globes, then like you can feel attractive too, but that's just one of many things. It's not what I look like and what I present to the world is my only worth. It's like you have real self-worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also different from self-love and self-compassion, because self-love and self-compassion, which I've been working on lately, has nothing to do with any sort of career accolade or any sort of outward achievement or even quality. It's just unwavering self-love no matter what. And that's really hard.
Yeah. And that's also where some limerence comes from, is that the parental love is not unconditional. So we have to give ourselves the love that we might not have received. And like we were saying, we've lost touch with a bunch of people we used to be. So if you're not accustomed to giving yourself that self-love, it doesn't mean that it's never achievable. It's just something to work on and something that you deserve.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. I have two questions for you. One, what would you suggest to me, a person going through an orgasm drought, to get myself out of it?
I would talk to a sexual health doctor, not just a gyno. I like doctors. I'm very doctory. So I would just have your, as someone who just is having their vulva checked out in a way that it never has before. It's been really cool.
Okay.
So that's cool.
Did you go to a sexual health doctor too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like that's this wasn't my gyno.
PT counts as that?
No, it's a couple of people. This woman specifically does pelvic PT.
Yeah.
And knows a lot about sexual health. She referred me to a sexual health doctor. It's a bunch of like different referrals and
stuff. It's a cocktail.
So I would say like sexual health doctor, someone who's going to like look at your vulva and check it out. And then also just have compassion. It's not your fault. Like just compassion for yourself.
Thank you.
And you're not doing this consciously. It's just, it is what it is.
And I would recommend to other people too, maybe watch Crazy Horny Ex-Girlfriend. It's pretty horny.
It's very horny.
Rachel Bloom, it has been so wonderful having you on this show. I just have to ask you, where can people find you and find your new show, which is fantastic? I saw it with Charlotte and my dad. It's called Death Let Me Do My Show. Go see it. Where can they find that and you online?
You can go to rachelbloomshow.com, and then my Instagram will have general information about it, and that's Rachel Does Stuff.
Amazing. I have one more question for you before we go, because I have to ask everybody this after a sexual encounter, which this has been pretty sexual.
It's very sexual.
Rachel Bloom, did you finish
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I finished too.
Great.
Inspired by you. You guys, that's our episode. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time on How Come. Goodbye.
Bye.
Say goodbye, Rachel.
Goodbye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Oh man, that was a fun episode. I am low-key limerent for her right now. And if you are too and you want more, you can watch the unedited version of this episode on patreon.com/howcome. We also have another episode yet to be edited with Dr. Tara, who is a relationship coach, sex coach. You might know her from TikTok. She's unreal. So that's up on Patreon already. And now that I'm editing this one, I'm remembering we should check in with Rachel about how that hormonal cream is doing for her hood. So maybe I will reach out and hopefully she will give us some updates, and I will let you guys know what those are. And if you want to read more about Limerence, I am going to attach the link to the attachment project down below. You can take that quiz. Let me know how it goes. And also, if you have been doing any of the assignments that I haven't been able to do, please write in. Let me know how they're going for you. I'm so curious. And like I said, we're going to still keep asking people for their assignments, whether I do them or not, because I think it's helpful for you guys. And you don't have the pressure of telling a bunch of people about it. You can keep it to yourself or tell me. But yeah, no pressure either way. Write to us at How Come Podcast or write directly to me at Remy Casimir. All right, bye guys. Thanks again for listening.